Claire thought she had the perfect life, a beautiful home in Boston, a loving husband, and a baby boy on the way. But when she found an $850 receipt in her husband's coat pocket, everything started to unravel. What she discovered next wasn't just an affair. It was a calculated plan to destroy her, steal her child, and leave her with nothing. This is the story of how one pregnant woman fought back against a master manipulator who underestimated her strength. Before we begin, if you love stories of courage and karma, hit that subscribe button and stick around until the end. You won't believe how this turns out. Claire Brennan stood in her Boston brownstone kitchen, 7 months pregnant and holding a crumpled receipt she'd found in Derek's coat pocket. $850 at Cartier. The date was last Tuesday, the same day he'd claimed to be working late on the Henderson merger. She pressed her hand against her swollen belly, feeling their son kick. They'd agreed to wait until after the baby came for expensive purchases. Money was tight with her on unpaid maternity leave and Derek's hedge fund going through a rough quarter, or so he'd told her. Morning, beautiful. Derek appeared in the doorway, already dressed in his tailored Tom Ford suit. At 33, he still had that prep school charm that had first attracted her at a charity gala 5 years ago. Blonde hair perfectly styled, blue eyes bright with confidence. Morning. Claire held up the receipt. What's this? He barely glanced at it. Client gift, Lawrence Whitmore's wife. You know how these things work. $850 for a client's wife. Derek poured himself coffee, his movements casual. It's called relationship building. Claire, that's how I keep us living in Beacon Hill instead of some apartment in Dorchester. The words stung. She'd been a successful marketing executive at a pharmaceutical company before the pregnancy complications forced her to quit. They'd lived off her salary and benefits for 3 years while Derek built his career. I'm just asking, she said quietly. He kissed her forehead. Don't worry about it. Focus on staying healthy. That's your job now. He grabbed his briefcase. Late meeting tonight? Don't wait up. After the door closed, Claire stared at the receipt. Something felt wrong. She'd met Lawrence Whitmore's wife at the firm's Christmas party. The woman wore drugstore jewelry and drove a 10-year-old Honda. Not exactly the Cartier type. Her phone buzzed. Jules Morrison, her best friend since their Boston University days. Coffee, I'm having a crisis about whether to take the Hutchinson divorce case. Your place in 20 minutes, Claire replied. She needed to talk to someone. And Jules, as one of Boston's rising divorce attorneys, might have perspective Claire desperately needed. The November wind bit through Claire's coat as she walked the 3 blocks to Jules' brownstone. Her friend answered the door in yoga pants and an oversized Harvard Law sweatshirt, blonde hair and a messy bun. You look terrible, Jules said, pulling her inside. Thanks. Claire sank onto the leather couch. I found a receipt in Derek's pocket. Expensive jewelry I've never seen. Jules poured 2 cups of chamomile tea. What did he say, a client gift? Claire wrapped her hands around the warm mug. But Jules, I met this client's wife. She's not the type. Could be legitimate. Holiday season, client appreciation. Jules studied her friend's face. But you don't believe that. He's been working late for months. Always has an explanation. Always makes me feel crazy for asking. Jules set down her mug. Claire, I see this pattern every day in my practice. But I also see innocent explanations that look suspicious. What does your gut tell you? That something's wrong, but I'm 7 months pregnant and hormonal and maybe just paranoid. Or maybe you're paying attention. Jules pulled out her iPad. Listen, I'm going to say something as your friend, not your lawyer. If Derek is hiding something, you need to be smart. You're vulnerable right now. No income, pregnant, completely dependent on him financially. Claire's chest tightened. You think I should investigate my own husband? I think you should protect yourself. Your name's on the joint accounts, right? Yes. But then you have a right to monitor them, not to to be informed about your own financial situation. Jules pulled up a banking website. Just look. If everything's fine, you'll feel better. If it's not, you'll be prepared. Claire hesitated, then logged into their joint account. She scrolled through recent transactions. Mortgage, utilities, groceries. All normal. Then she saw it. Transfer to external account, $47,000. What the hell? Her hands shook. Jules, where did $47,000 go? Jules leaned closer, her attorney instincts activating. When 3 months ago, then another 20,000 last month, and 15,000 2 weeks ago, Claire's voice rose. That's over $80,000. Where is it going? The account number's listed. I can have my investigator trace it. Discreetly. Claire stared at the screen. Part of her wanted to close the laptop, forget what she'd seen, trust her husband. But another part, the part that had built a successful career on reading market trends and trusting data, knew something was very wrong. Do it, she whispered. That afternoon, Claire's phone synced automatically with Derek's iPad at home. A calendar notification popped up on her screen. V, ultrasound appointment, 2 p.m., Thursday. Her blood ran cold. Her ultrasound had been yesterday. Who was V? And why did Derek have their ultrasound appointment in his calendar? Thursday arrived with freezing rain that matched Claire's mood. She'd barely slept. Derek's calendar notification burning in her mind. V, ultrasound, 2 p.m. She'd considered confronting him directly, but Jules's advice echoed. If he's hiding something, he'll just hide it better. You need evidence. At 1:30, Claire sat in her Volvo across from the Brookline Medical Center, wipers beating steadily against the rain. She felt ridiculous. Pregnant women shouldn't be staking out medical buildings. They should be home, resting, preparing nurseries. But she couldn't shake the dread that had settled in her bones. At 1:55, Derek's black BMW pulled into the parking lot. Claire slumped lower in her seat. Hard hammering, he emerged from the car. No umbrella. Jogging toward the entrance. 10 minutes passed. 20. Claire's back ached, and the baby pressed heavily against her bladder. She was about to give up when the building's glass doors opened. Derek walked out. Next to him, a woman. Young, maybe 26. Long dark hair. Designer coat. Also pregnant. Maybe 5 or 6 months along based on her visible bump. Claire couldn't breathe. Derek's hand rested on the woman's lower back, guiding her toward his car with an intimacy Claire recognized. She'd seen him touch her the same way 1,000 times. They stopped beside the BM. The woman said something. Laughing, Derek smiled. That genuine smile he used to give Claire. Then he leaned down and kissed her. Not a friendly peck, a real kiss. His hand moved to the woman's pregnant belly. Claire's vision tunneled. The steering wheel felt miles away. This couldn't be happening. Not Derek, not her Derek, not while she carried his child. She watched them drive away, his BMW's taillights disappearing into the rain. Then she vomited into the empty coffee cup in her center console. For an hour, Claire sat in that parking lot, shaking. Rain drummed on the roof. She pressed both hands against her belly, feeling their son move inside her. I'm sorry, she whispered to him. I'm so sorry. Finally, she drove home through rush hour traffic. Every red light felt like a lifetime. She kept seeing it. The kiss, his hand on that woman's stomach, the tender way he'd looked at her. At home, she climbed the stairs to their bedroom. Derek wouldn't be back until late. He'd said dinner meeting. She wondered if that was true or if he'd be with her, the woman with the dark hair and the pregnant belly. Claire opened Derek's closet, hands moving on autopilot. She searched coat pockets, found nothing. Dresser drawers yielded old receipts, business cards, nothing damning. Then she remembered. The home office. Derek's private space. The room smelled like his cologne and leather. She pulled open desk drawers systematically. Files, tax documents, investment statements. A locked drawer stopped her. She tried the letter opener in the pen cup. Too thick. Then she saw it, a small key taped to the underside of the desk lamp. The locked drawer opened. Inside, a manila envelope. Her hands trembled as she pulled out the contents. Ultrasound photos. Not hers. Different dates. A medical bracelet with a name Vanessa Hartley. Credit card statements for an account she didn't know existed. Charges at restaurants she'd never been to. A hotel in Cambridge. The Cartier purchase. Another jewelry charge for $3,000. And at the bottom, a real estate contract. Derek had put a deposit on a condo in Seaport. 2 bedrooms. Closing date 3 weeks from now. The same week Claire was due to give birth. Her phone rang. Derek. She stared at his name on the screen, watching it ring once, twice, three times. She answered, "Hey, babe, just wanted to let you know the meeting's running long. Probably won't be home until after midnight. You okay?" His voice sounded so normal, so loving, like he wasn't building a second life with another pregnant woman. "I'm fine," Claire heard herself say. "See you later." She hung up and stared at the ultrasound photo of Vanessa Hartley's baby. Then she called Jules. "I need you to come over. Now." Jules arrived within 20 minutes, found Claire sitting on the office floor surrounded by evidence of Derek's double life. "Jesus Christ," Jules breathed, picking up the ultrasound photos. "Claire, I'm so sorry." "She's due 3 weeks before me," Claire said numbly. "He's having two babies, 3 weeks apart, with two different women." Jules sat beside her, lawyer mode engaging. "Okay, we need to think clearly. Did you take photos of everything?" "No, I couldn't think." "Start now. Document everything. We're going to need this." Jules pulled out her phone. "And I'm calling my investigator. This Vanessa Hartley. The condo. The accounts, we need full financial disclosure." "Jules, what do I do? Do I confront him?" Her friend's green eyes were fierce. "Not yet. If he knows you know, he'll move faster to protect himself. Right now, you have the element of surprise. We use it." Claire looked at the ultrasound of Vanessa's baby. A girl, according to the notes. Derek was having a daughter and a son, two complete families. Why? Her voice cracked. "Why wasn't I enough?" Jules pulled her close. "This isn't about you not being enough. This is about him being a sociopath, and we're going to make sure he pays for it." But as Claire cried in her best friend's arms, she couldn't shake one terrifying thought. Derek was always 3 steps ahead of everyone. What if he already knew she'd found out? What if this was all part of some larger plan she couldn't see? The baby kicked hard, as if sensing his mother's distress. "I'll protect you," Claire whispered to her unborn son. "Whatever it takes. I promise." Claire couldn't wait. Despite Jules's advice to stay strategic, something inside her snapped that night. At 11 p.m., she drove to the Cambridge hotel listed on Derek's secret credit card statements. The Marlowe, a boutique property where rooms ran $400 a night. Her hands shook on the steering wheel. She was 7 months pregnant, exhausted, terrified. But she needed to see his face when she caught him. Needed him to know she wasn't stupid, wasn't blind, wasn't going to disappear quietly. The valet eyed her pregnant belly with concern as she climbed out of the Volvo. "Are you okay, ma'am?" "I'm fine." She wasn't fine. She was a grenade with the pin pulled. Inside, the lobby was all modern elegance. Leather chairs, dim lighting, jazz playing softly. Claire approached the desk where a young woman with a neat bun smiled professionally. "I'm here to see Derek Brennan. He's expecting me." A lie, but delivered with such exhausted conviction that the clerk simply nodded. "Room 412. Elevators are—" "I know where they are." Claire had been here before, 2 years ago for a friend's wedding reception, back when she trusted Derek completely. The elevator ride felt endless. Her reflection stared back from the mirrored walls, a pregnant woman in a rain-soaked coat. Mascara smudged, hair wild. She looked like someone from a Lifetime movie. She felt like someone whose life was ending. "Room 412. She knocked. Once. Twice. The door opened. Derek stood there in a hotel bathrobe, his face registering confusion, then panic. Behind him, Claire could see rumpled sheets, and sitting on the bed in one of Derek's button-down shirts was her, Vanessa Hartley. Even more beautiful up close, dark hair tumbling over her shoulders, skin glowing with that second trimester radiance. "Claire," Derek's voice cracked. "What are you doing here?" "What am I doing here?" Claire pushed past him into the room. "I found your secret drawer. Derek, the ultrasounds, the condo contract, the credit card statements." She turned to Vanessa. "Did he tell you about me?" Vanessa's face went pale. "Tell me what?" "That he's married, that his wife is also pregnant, that our due dates are 3 weeks apart." "Derek," Vanessa's voice was small, confused. He stepped between them, hands raised. "Claire, let me explain." "Explain what?" How you've been living a double life. How you've spent over $80,000 of our money on your mistress. Claire's voice rose. How you bought a condo to play house with her while I sleep among thrush in our bed. You're married. Vanessa stood, clutching the shirt around her pregnant belly. You told me you were divorced. You said your ex-wife lived in California. Derek's face shifted, the mask slipping. For a moment, Claire saw something cold and calculating in his eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by desperate pleading. I was going to tell you both. I was trying to figure out the right way. There is no right way, Claire shouted. You're having 2 babies with 2 women in the same month. A hotel phone rang on the nightstand. Derek grabbed it, listened, then hung up. Security's coming. Claire, you need to leave. I need to leave. She laughed, a horrible sound. This is Rich. I'm the problem here. Vanessa was crying now, mascara streaking her face. How could you do this? I thought we were building a life together. We are, Derek said, turning to her. Claire and I have been over for months. She's unstable. I was waiting until after the baby to finalize things. Claire's blood turned to ice. I'm unstable. You've been depressed, emotional. You quit your bomb. I've been worried about you. He looked at Vanessa, his voice gentle. I didn't want to stress you during the pregnancy. You know how important this is to me. Oh, it was masterful. In 30 seconds, he'd reframed the entire situation, made Claire the villain. You're lying, Claire said, but her voice wavered. Am I? Derek crossed his arms. Ask yourself why you're here at midnight, screaming in a hotel room. Does that seem like the behavior of a stable person? 2 security guards appeared at the door. One spoke to Derek quietly. Derek nodded, his face arranged in concern. My wife, he said, loud enough for the guards to hear. She's having some difficulties with the pregnancy, paranoia, depression. I'm worried about her. I'm not crazy, Claire shouted, but the guards were already moving toward her. Ma'am, we need you to leave the premises. He's lying. Check the records. I'm his wife. She's his mistress. But they were escorting her toward the elevator, their grips firm but professional. Behind her, she heard Vanessa crying, heard Derek comforting her. It's okay, sweetheart. She'll be okay. She just needs help. In the lobby. The guards released her. Do you need us to call someone, a family member? Claire looked at their concerned faces. They thought she was unhinged. Derek had played it perfectly. I'm fine, she whispered. She drove home in a daze. Inside their brownstone, she climbed the stairs to the nursery. The walls were painted soft blue. The crib Derek had assembled stood ready. Books lined the shelves. A mobile hung from the ceiling. Planets and stars. She'd built this space with love, with trust, with the naive belief that her husband was who he claimed to be. Now it all felt like a tomb. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stay away from Derek, or you'll regret it. He's mine. V. Claire sat in the rocking chair, her hands on her belly, and finally let herself break. The next morning, Derek came home. He found Claire at the kitchen table, staring at cold coffee. She hadn't slept, hadn't changed clothes, hadn't moved except to use the bathroom. Claire! He sat across from her, his face arranged in perfect contrition. I'm so sorry you had to find out that way. She looked at him, really looked. How had she never seen it? The calculating coldness behind his charm. Which part are you sorry for? The affair, the second baby, the $80,000 you stole, the condo you bought without telling me. I didn't steal anything. That money was mine. We have joint accounts, and I earned most of what's in them. He leaned forward. Claire, Boyan, I didn't want to hurt you, but we both know this marriage has been dead for months. You quit working. You stopped taking care of yourself. We became roommates who happened to be having a kid together. Each word was a calculated strike. She felt herself reeling. Was he right? Had she let herself go? Had she driven him away? No. She caught herself. This was manipulation. Classic gaslighting. I quit working because I had complications. The doctor ordered bed rest. For 2 weeks. Then you decided to stay home. That was your choice. We agreed I'd stay home until after the baby. You decided I went along with it because you were emotional. Derek's voice was gentle, reasonable. Look, I don't want to fight. I came to make this right. He pulled papers from his briefcase. I talked to my lawyer. We can do this quietly. Mediation instead of court. You get the house, alimony, child support. I get shared custody. Everyone wins. Claire stared at the papers. You already went to a lawyer. I've been thinking about divorce for months. Last night just accelerated things. He pushed the papers toward her. Sign these. We'll both be happier. What about Vanessa? What happens to her? Something flickered across his face. That's none of your concern. You're having her baby. I'm having two babies? With two women? It's complicated, but I'll manage. I always do. He stood. Read the papers. Sign them. Or don't. And we do this the hard way. Your choice. After he left, Claire called Jules. He's already filed. Jules' sounded stunned. That fast? He said he's been thinking about it for months. Jules, he made it sound so reasonable. Like I'm the one who ruined everything. That's what they do. Listen, don't sign anything. I'm coming over. An hour later, Jules sat at Claire's table, reading the documents with increasing alarm. This is garbage. He's offering you $1,500 a month in child support. That's barely enough for diapers. And shared custody means 50-50. You'd have to hand over your newborn to him and his mistress half the week. Can he do that? If you sign this, yes. If you fight, maybe not. But Claire, there's something worse. Jules pulled out a page. See this clause? You waive all rights to his retirement accounts, investment portfolios, and future earnings. You get the house and $1,500 a month. He keeps everything else. But those accounts, I help build those. My salary, my benefits. Exactly, this is theft dressed up as generosity. Jules's jaw tightened. He's hoping you're too emotional and tired to think clearly, that you'll just sign to make the pain stop. Claire felt tears starting. What do I do? We fight me, and we dig into his finances. Those transfers, my investigator traced them. Want to know where the money went? Tell me. An LLC he created 6 months ago. Sole proprietor Derek Brennan. That money isn't for Vanessa or the condo. He's been hiding assets. Probably planning this divorce for months. Moving money out of reach so you can't claim it. The betrayal went deeper than Claire had imagined. This wasn't passion or weakness. This was calculated, premeditated destruction. He's been planning this since I got pregnant, she whispered. Jules nodded grimly. I think so. The question is why. Most cheaters just cheat. They don't blow up their entire lives methodically. Claire's phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. Claire Brennan, a professional female voice. This is Linda Crawford from Protective Services. We need to schedule a welfare check regarding your unborn child. Claire's blood ran cold. What? Why? We received a report that you may be experiencing severe depression and making threats of self-harm. Standard procedure. We'll need to come by within 48 hours. Who reported that? I'm not at liberty to say, but we take all reports seriously, especially involving pregnant mothers. After she hung up, Claire looked at Jules with dawning horror. He called CPS on me? Jules's face went white. That son of a... He told them I'm unstable, that I'm a threat to the baby. Claire's hands shook. This isn't just divorce. He's trying to take my son away from me. He can't do that. You're not unstable. But I am in therapy for the pregnancy anxiety. And last night I did storm into a hotel room screaming. He's building a case. Jules. Making me look crazy so he can get a full custody. Jules grabbed her hand. Then we build a better case. One that shows exactly what he is. But Claire, you need to be smart now. No more confrontations. No emotional reactions. Everything you do, assume it's being watched and documented. How did this happen? Claire's voice broke. 2 days ago, I was preparing a nursery. Now I'm fighting for my baby. Because he's a sociopath in expensive suits, Jules said. And he thought you'd be an easy target. But he's wrong. That night, Derek didn't come home. Claire sat in the dark nursery, feeling their son kick. She thought about the woman she'd been a week ago. Naive, trusting, building a life on quicksand. That woman was gone. In her place was someone harder. Someone who would do whatever it took to protect her child, even if it meant destroying the man she'd once loved. Reed Sullivan stood 6'3", had a special forces tattoo on his forearm, and protective instincts that bordered on feral when it came to his little sister. When Claire called him at 2 a.m., crying so hard she could barely speak, he was in his truck within minutes. He arrived at dawn, still wearing the construction site clothes from his foreman job, and found Claire exactly where she'd been all night in the nursery, surrounded by evidence of Derek's betrayal. "I'm going to kill him," Reed said after she explained everything. "That won't help. It'll make me feel better." But he pulled her into a hug, his work-rough hands gentle on her back. "Jesus, Claire, I never liked that preppy bastard. You could have mentioned that before I married him. You were happy, or I thought you were." He pulled back, studying her face. "What do you need money place to stay? I've got the apartment in Southie. It's not fancy, but I need Derek to stop destroying my life." When Claire wiped her eye, "Jules says I have to stay calm. Let the lawyers handle it. But Reed, he's trying to take my baby. He filed a false report with CPS. Made me look unstable." Reed's jaw worked. She recognized that look. She'd seen it before. Usually right before her brother did something that landed him in trouble. "Don't," she said. "Don't what?" "Whatever you're thinking. Derek wants me to look unstable. If my brother assaults him, that just proves his point. So I do nothing while he gaslights you and steals your kid. You help me survive this. That's not nothing." Claire pressed her hands to her belly. "But you have to promise me. No confrontations. No threats. Please." Reed was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Okay, for you. But if he lays one hand on you." "He won't. He's too smart for that. He destroys people legally." Her brother made coffee while Claire showered and changed for the first time in 2 days. When she came downstairs, he'd made eggs and toast. She couldn't remember the last time someone had taken care of her. "Eat," he ordered. "You and the kid need food." They sat at the table like they'd done as children, when it had been just the two of them against the world after their parents died. Reed had been 19, Claire 15. He'd dropped out of college to raise her, working construction jobs to keep their small family afloat. "I should have protected you better," he said quietly. "You did. You raised me. Put me through college. This isn't your fault. I should have seen what he was. I didn't see it, and I lived with him." Claire forced down a bite of toast. "Jules says the CPS visit is just procedure. They'll see I'm fine. Close the case. But it goes in a file. If Derek tries for custody, they'll pull that file. Then we make sure that file says you're Mother of the Year." The doorbell rang. Claire tensed, but Reed checked the peephole. "It's your friend." The lawyer. Jules came in with her laptop and an associate, a sharp-eyed man named Marcus Reeves who specialized in family law. "Change of strategy," Jules said, setting up at the kitchen table. "We go on offense. Marcus has been digging into Derek's finances. Tell them what you found." Marcus opened a spreadsheet. "Your husband's been busy. The LLC he created, it's received $460,000 from his investment firm. Money that should have been reported as marital assets." Claire's head spun. "Almost $500,000. Hidden in offshore accounts, shell companies, cryptocurrency. He's been planning this exit for at least a year." Marcus pulled up more documents. "And there's more. The condo he bought in Seaport, not in his name. It's in Vanessa Hartley's mother's name, but Derek's been paying for it." "Why would he do that?" Reed asked. "So it doesn't show up in divorce proceedings," Jules explained. "He's trying to look broke on paper while hiding massive assets. It's fraud." Claire felt a spark of hope. "Can we prove it?" "We can, but it'll take time, and Derek knows that. The longer this drags out, the more he can drain accounts and move assets." Marcus leaned forward. "There's something else. Derek's firm has been under SEC investigation for the past 6 months. Insider trading allegations." "What?" This was news to Claire. "He didn't tell you, but if they find evidence, he could face federal charges, prison time." Marcus paused. "My theory, he knows he's going down. He's trying to divorce you, hide his assets, and leave you holding the bag legally." Reed slammed his hand on the table. "And leave her broke with a baby while he starts fresh with his mistress." "Exactly," Jules said. Unless we stop him first. They spent the morning strategizing. File for emergency financial disclosure. Request full audit of Derek's accounts. Document every asset. Jules would petition the court to freeze joint accounts so Derek couldn't drain them further. At noon, Reed left for work, making Claire promise to keep her doors locked. Jules stayed, working from the kitchen table. Her associate making call after call. Claire felt like a war was being waged in her home. And maybe it was. Her phone buzzed. Derek, we need to talk, tonight. Just us. No lawyers. She showed Jules the text. Trap, Jules said immediately. He wants you alone so you'll say something he can use against you. Or sign something without representation. Don't go. But Claire thought about the baby kicking inside her. About the nursery upstairs. About the life she'd built that was crumbling. What if I wear a wire? Jules looked up sharply. Are you serious? You said we need evidence. Let's get it. Let him think I'm vulnerable and stupid. Let him tell me his real plans. And we record all of it. Marcus grinned. I like how she thinks. Jules was less convinced. It's risky. If he finds the recorder, he won't. He thinks I'm too emotional to be strategic. Claire felt something hardening inside her. Derek had underestimated her. That was his first mistake. At 7 p.m., Claire sat across from Derek at a quiet restaurant in Cambridge. She wore a maternity dress and a recorder taped between her breasts. Her hands shook as she ordered water. Derek looked tired, stressed. Good, she thought viciously. I'm glad you came, he said. We need to end this reasonably. For the baby's sake. What about your other baby? With Vanessa. He sighed. That's complicated. Complicated how? Vanessa was a mistake. I'm ending things with her. Claire's breath caught. What? I've been thinking. About what matters. About what I want. He reached across the table for her hand. She let him take it, her skin crawling. I want our son. Our family. I made a terrible mistake. Claire, but I can fix it. Every word was a lie. She could see it in his eyes. How, she asked. Drop the financial claims. Sign the papers. Let me handle the money. You get the house, alimony, in full custody. I'll be a weekend dad. Everyone wins. There it was. He wanted full financial control and minimal parental responsibility, which meant he was planning something bigger. What about the $460,000 you hid? His face went blank. What are you talking about? The offshore accounts, Derek, the LLC, the cryptocurrency. Jules found it all. For the first time, she saw him rattled. That lawyer is filling your head with paranoid fantasies. Is she, or are you just angry you got caught? Claire leaned forward. What happens when the SEC finishes their investigation? Do I get dragged into that too? His eyes went cold. All pretense dropped. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Then explain it to me. Fine. Here's the truth. He pulled his hand back. I'm leaving. The country. Probably the SEC has nothing concrete, but I'm not waiting around to find out. I've got money they'll never find and a new life waiting. Vanessa thinks she's coming with me she's not. Neither are you. What about your son? What about him? Kids are expensive, Claire. They tie you down. I never wanted to be a father. You did. So congratulations. You are about to be a single mother with no money and no support. Unless what? You sign the papers. Take the settlement. Walk away quietly. Then I'll make sure you get enough to live on. Fight me, and I'll bury you. I'll take the kid out of spite. I'll drain every account. I'll make sure you end up living in your brother's shitty apartment, working retail to afford diapers. The cruelty was breathtaking. Claire sat back, her hand on her belly. You never loved me. Love's a fairy tale. I married you because you were useful. Good job, good family, good look for the firm. Then you got pregnant and stopped being useful. So I found someone who is, he stood. Think about what I said. You have 48 hours. He walked out, leaving her sitting alone with a recorder full of his confession. Claire called Jules from the parking lot. I got it, all of it. You're sure? Every word. Claire felt tears coming, not from sadness, from rage. Let's destroy him. The next morning, Claire woke to pounding on her door. She stumbled downstairs in her bathrobe, 7 months pregnant and exhausted, to find two police officers on her porch. Claire Brennan. The female officer's face was professional, but not unkind. Yes, you need to come with us. What? Why? You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit assault. The world tilted. That's insane. I haven't. Ma'am, we have a warrant. Please get dressed. You can call your lawyer from the station. In a daze, Claire dressed, her hands shaking. This couldn't be happening. The officers waited in her living room, their radios crackling. She called Jules, who didn't answer. Left a voicemail. They're arresting me. I don't know why. At the police station, they processed her like she was a criminal. Fingerprints, mugshot, her pregnant belly prominent in the photo. They put her in a holding cell that smelled like bleach and desperation. An hour passed. 2. Finally, a detective came to the cell. Detective Sarah Moss, 50s, gray hair in a tight bun, eyes that had seen everything. Mrs. Brennan, this can go easy or hard. Your choice. I don't know what I'm supposed to have done. Really, you don't know about the text messages on your phone, the ones where you discuss hiring someone to hurt Vanessa Hartley. Claire's blood went cold. That's impossible. We have the messages, time-stamped, from your number to a known enforcer. You offered $5,000 to take care of the problem. That's conspiracy to commit assault on a pregnant woman, Mrs. Brennan. That's serious time. I never sent those texts. Someone's framing me. Detective Moss pulled out printed screenshots as Claire recognized her phone number. The messages were explicit, discussing payment, targets, timing, but she'd never written them. Check my actual phone, you'll see. We did. These messages were deleted, but phone companies keep records. We pulled them. It's not real, my husband. He must have. Your soon-to-be ex-husband is the one who reported you. He was concerned for Ms. Hartley's safety after your confrontation at the hotel. The detective's voice softened slightly. Look, I have kids. I know pregnancy hormones can make you do crazy things. If you cooperate, tell us who you hired. Maybe the DA will consider diminished capacity. I didn't hire anyone. Derek's setting me up. But even as she said it, Claire realized how it sounded. Desperate, paranoid. Exactly how Derek wanted her to look. Jules finally arrived at 6 p.m., furious and terrified. They spoke through plexiglass in a visitation room. This is a setup, Jules said immediately. Derek planted those messages somehow. We'll prove it. How they have phone records. Jules, my number. How did he do that? I don't know yet, but we'll figure it out. Jules's hands pressed against the glass. The bail hearing's tomorrow. I'll get you out. But Claire, this is bad, really bad. If this goes to trial, I could lose my baby. Yes, Claire pressed both hands to her belly. He planned this. All of it. The CPS report, the financial hiding. Now this. He's systematically destroying me. I know, but we're going to fight back. Marcus is already digging into Derek's phone records. His computer access, everything. There has to be evidence he fabricated this. That night, Claire lay on a thin mattress in a cell, listening to other women cry and argue and pace. Her son kicked inside her, and she whispered promises she didn't know if she could keep. The bail hearing the next morning was a nightmare. The prosecutor painted Claire as an unstable, jealous wife who'd attempted to hire violence against a pregnant woman. Derek sat in the gallery, his face arranged in sorrowful concern. Jules argued passionately Claire had no criminal record, was 7 months pregnant, posed no flight risk. The judge set bail at $50,000. Money Claire didn't have. Derek had frozen their joint accounts. Her savings was gone, spent on baby supplies and nursery furniture. Reed posted bail using his house as collateral. When Claire walked out of lockup, her brother pulled her into his arms. We're going to fix this, he promised. But that afternoon, Claire received notification that CPS was opening a full investigation. The arrest triggered mandatory review. They'd need to interview her, inspect her home, review her medical records, and in 3 days, she had a custody hearing. Derek was petitioning for full custody, citing her arrest, her mental instability, and her violent tendencies. Claire sat in Jules' office, surrounded by legal documents, and finally let herself say it out loud. I'm going to lose my baby. No, Jules grabbed her hands. You're not, because I have the recording from the restaurant. Derek confessing he never wanted children, that he's planning to flee the country, that he's been hiding assets. We play that in court. Everything changes. Will it be admissible? It's Massachusetts. One-party consent for recordings. You can record any conversation you're part of. It's legal. Jules pulled out her laptop. And Marcus found something else. Those text messages, they were sent using software that spoofs phone numbers. Derek's computer at work shows downloads of that exact software 3 days before the messages were sent. Hope flickered. You can prove he framed me. We can create reasonable doubt. It might not get the charges dropped, but it'll show a pattern of manipulation. And that recording, Claire, it's a confession. He admits to fraud, to planning to abandon his child, to threatening you. It's everything we need. For the first time in days, Claire felt like she could breathe. That night, alone in Reed's apartment, Claire stood at the window looking out at Boston's lights. Somewhere out there, Derek was probably celebrating, thinking he'd won, but he'd made a mistake. He'd underestimated her, underestimated Jules, underestimated how far a mother would go to protect her child. The custody hearing was in 3 days, and Claire was done playing defense. The morning of the custody hearing, Claire woke at 5 a.m. in Reed's spare room. Her back ached, the baby pressed against her ribs, and exhaustion made her movements slow. But her mind was sharp, focused on one thing: survival. Jules arrived at 7 with a garment bag. You're wearing this. Navy dress, modest cut, pearl earrings. We're going for stable, capable mother. Not woman on the edge. I am a woman on the edge. I know, but the judge doesn't need to. Jules helped her dress, pinned her hair back in a neat bun. Marcus will present the recording first. Then we hit them with the financial fraud evidence. By the time Derek's lawyer realizes what's happening, it'll be too late. At the courthouse, Claire's hands shook as they passed through security. She saw Derek across the lobby, flanked by 2 expensive lawyers. He looked confident, relaxed. When their eyes met, he smiled. That smile said everything. He thought he'd already won. The courtroom was smaller than Claire expected. Judge Patricia Henley presided, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and no patience for nonsense. She reviewed the case file while they settled into their seats. This is an emergency custody hearing, Judge Henley began. Mr. Brennan has petitioned for full custody of the unborn child, citing concerns about Mrs. Brennan's fitness as a mother. Mrs. Brennan contests. We'll hear from both sides. Mr. Brennan's counsel. You may begin. Derek's lead attorney, a silver-haired man named Robert Ashford, stood. Your Honor, our evidence will show that Mrs. Brennan has exhibited increasingly erratic and dangerous behavior. She's under criminal investigation for conspiracy to commit assault against a pregnant woman. That case hasn't gone to trial, though, Jules interjected. But the charges exist. Ashford continued smoothly. Combined with her documented depression, her confrontation at a hotel, and a CPS report, we believe the child would be at risk in her care. The words hurt even though Claire expected them. She watched the judge take notes, her face unreadable. Additionally, Ashford said, Mr. Brennan has evidence that Mrs. Brennan has made threats against him and his business partner. She's been erratic, emotional, and potentially dangerous. For the child's safety, we ask for full custody with supervised visitation only for the mother. Judge Henley looked at Claire. Mrs. Brennan, you'll have your chance to respond. Mr. Ashford, present your evidence. For the next hour, Derek's team painted Claire as unstable, depressed, violent. They presented the CPS report, photos from her arrest, even her therapy records, which they'd somehow obtained. Claire sat frozen, watching her life dissected. Everything she'd done seeking therapy, trying to confront Derek, even calling the police was being used against her. Finally, Judge Henley turned to Jules. Counselor, your response. Jules stood, and Claire saw something fierce in her friend's eyes. Your Honor, everything Mr. Ashford presented is true. Mrs. Brennan did confront her husband at a hotel. She is in therapy. She was arrested. But context matters. And the context is that Derek Brennan is a master manipulator who's been systematically destroying my client for months. She nodded to Marcus, who activated a laptop. We'd like to present evidence. Derek's confident expression faltered. The recording played through courtroom speakers. Derek's voice, cold and clear. I never wanted to be a father. Kids are expensive. They tie you down. In the gallery, there were gasps. Judge Henley leaned forward. The recording continued. Derek admitting to hiding assets, planning to flee the country, threatening to take the child out of spite. Every word a damning confession. When it ended, the silence was absolute. Derek's lawyer recovered first. Your Honor, we contest the admissibility of this recording. Brennan had no right. Massachusetts is a one-party consent state. Jules cut in. Brennan was a participant in that conversation. The recording is legal and admissible, and it proves that Mr. Brennan has been lying to this court about his intentions. Judge Henley's expression had gone cold. Mr. Ashford, does your client have a response? Derek whispered urgently to his lawyers. Ashford stood. My client was upset, said things he didn't mean. He said he planned to take the child out of spite. Jules interrupted. He said he'd been hiding assets. He threatened to leave the country. Those aren't angry words. Your Honor, that's a confession to multiple crimes. Marcus stood. We also have evidence of financial fraud. Over $460,000 hidden in offshore accounts and shell companies. Money that belongs to both spouses but which Mr. Brennan has been systematically hiding to avoid asset division. He distributed packets to the judge and opposing counsel. Bank records, LLC filings, cryptocurrency transactions. All traceable to Mr. Brennan, all done in the 6 months since Mrs. Brennan became pregnant. Derek's face had gone white. His lawyers huddled, whispering, but Jules wasn't done. There's more, Your Honor. The text messages that led to Mrs. Brennan's arrest, they were sent using spoofing software downloaded on Mr. Brennan's work computer. We have forensic evidence that he fabricated those messages to frame my client. She pulled out more documents. Computer logs, download history, metadata. Derek Brennan created fake evidence, reported it to police, and had his pregnant wife arrested. All to make her look unstable so he could win this custody case. The courtroom erupted. Judge Henley banged her gavel. Order. Derek stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. I'm trying to protect my son from a woman who's clearly... Sit down, Mr. Brennan, the judge snapped. You'll have your turn. But Derek was unraveling. She's been impossible for months, emotional, demanding, constantly accusing me. I did what I had to do to protect myself and my child. By framing her for conspiracy to commit assault, Jules's voice cut through the noise. By calling CPS with false reports, by hiding nearly $500,000. That money is mine. It's marital property, Jules corrected. And you hid it to defraud your wife. That's a crime. Mr. Brennan, Derek's lawyer grabbed his arm, trying to silence him. But the damage was done. He'd lost his composure completely. Judge Henley studied them both for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice hard. I'm ordering an immediate forensic audit of all marital finances. I'm also ordering Mr. Brennan to submit his computer and phone for independent analysis regarding the allegedly spoofed text messages. And I'm referring this case to the district attorney's office for potential criminal charges. Derek's face crumbled. As for custody, Judge Henley continued, looking at Claire. I see no evidence that Mrs. Brennan poses a risk to her child. However, given the serious allegations on both sides, I'm ordering the following. Mrs. Brennan retains full custody upon birth. Mr. Brennan will have supervised visitation only, pending resolution of the criminal investigation into his conduct. This hearing is adjourned. The gavel came down. Claire couldn't breathe. She'd won. Not completely, not perfectly, but she'd won. Derek stood frozen, his lawyers arguing urgently with him. Then his eyes met Claire's across the courtroom. The look he gave her was pure hatred. This isn't over, he mouthed. But for the first time in weeks, Claire wasn't afraid. She placed her hand on her belly and smiled. Jules grabbed her arm. We need to go, now. While we're ahead, they hurried out of the courtroom. Reed meeting them in the hallway. He pulled Claire into a fierce hug. You did it, sis. You actually did it. We're not done yet, Jules warned. The criminal charges, the divorce, the financial audit, it's going to take months. Maybe years. Derek won't go quietly. Claire knew she was right, but standing there, her brother's arms around her, her best friend beside her, she felt something she hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. 3 days after the hearing, Claire moved back into the brownstone. Derek was gone, living in a hotel while the house was deemed marital property under court protection. Walking through rooms that had been her prison felt strange, like touring a museum of her former life. Jules helped her change locks and install security cameras. Just in case, her friend said, though they both knew what she meant. Derek, cornered and exposed, was dangerous. That night, alone in the house for the first time since everything collapsed, Claire sat in the nursery. Her due date was 3 weeks away. 3 weeks to prepare for single motherhood, to finalize the divorce, to build a life from ruins. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Claire. It was Vanessa Hartley, her voice small and scared. Please don't hang up. Claire's first instinct was to disconnect, but curiosity won. What do you want? To apologize and to warn you. Vanessa's voice cracked. Derek came to see me after the hearing. He's not the man I thought he was. He's not the man either of us thought he was. I know exactly what he is. No, you don't. Vanessa took a shaky breath. He told me about his plan. All of it. He was using me from the beginning. The baby, the relationship, everything. It was all a setup. Claire's hand tightened on the phone. Set up for what? He's under investigation by the SEC, has been for months. He knew he might go to prison, so he started moving money, hiding assets. He needed someone to blame if it all fell apart. Vanessa's voice dropped to a whisper. That someone was supposed to be you. He was going to divorce you, leave you with nothing, and disappear before the feds could arrest him. Wait, why are you telling me this? Because I'm 8 months pregnant with a man's baby who never loved me, who used me to destroy you, and now he's threatening me too. Vanessa started crying. He said if I testify against him, he'll make sure I never see my daughter, that he'll claim I'm an unfit mother. He's going to do to me what he tried to do to you. Claire closed her eyes. She should feel satisfaction at Vanessa's pain. The other woman had slept with her husband, participated in the deception, but all she felt was exhaustion and a strange, bitter kinship. What do you want from me? Help, or at least a truce. My mother hired a private investigator. We found more, bank accounts in the Caymans, properties in Costa Rica. Derek's been planning his escape for over a year. He was going to leave both of us holding the bag while he started over. Do you have proof? Yes, and I'll give it to your lawyer. All of it. Vanessa paused. I know you hate me. You should. But we're both his victims, and if we work together, we can stop him from doing this to anyone else. After hanging up, Claire called Jules. Vanessa Hartley just called. She wants to help. That's a trap, Jules said immediately. Maybe, but she claims to have evidence, financial records, properties, escape plans. What if she's telling the truth? Then Derek's more screwed than we thought. But Claire, be careful. This woman is carrying his child. She has her own motivations. I know, but we're both 8 months pregnant, both abandoned by the same man. That's got to count for something. 2 days later, Claire and Vanessa met at a neutral location, a coffee shop in Cambridge. The encounter was surreal. Both of them heavily pregnant, sitting across from each other like mirror images of Derek's manipulation. Vanessa looked tired, her eyes red-rimmed. Thank you for coming. Let's be clear, Claire said. I don't forgive you. You slept with my husband, helped him betray me. I know. I'm not asking for forgiveness. Vanessa slid a flash drive across the table. I'm asking for a chance to make it right. Claire looked at the small device. What's on it? Everything. Derek's offshore accounts, totaling over $900,000. Property deeds in Costa Rica, Panama, and the Dominican Republic. Flight bookings for next month before either of our due dates. And recordings. Recordings of Derek talking to his business partner, Grant Ellis, planning the whole thing, how he'd pin the SEC violations on you if necessary, how he never wanted kids, but pregnancies made good cover for looking responsible. Vanessa's voice broke. He called us both idiots, said we were so desperate to be loved that we made it easy. Claire felt sick. Why didn't you come forward sooner? Because I loved him, or thought I did, and I wanted to believe he loved me. Vanessa pressed both hands to her belly. My daughter deserves better than this, than him. So do you and your son? Claire took the flash drive. What happens to you now? My mother's helping me. We're moving to California after the baby's born. Starting over. Vanessa met her eyes. I know I don't deserve sympathy, but I hope you get everything you want from him. Everything he stole. After Vanessa left, Claire sat with the flash drive, this tiny piece of plastic that held Derek's entire criminal conspiracy. She called Jules. I have it, all of it. We've got him. The next week unfolded like dominoes falling. Jules and Marcus presented the new evidence to both the divorce court and the SEC investigators. Derek's carefully constructed lies collapsed under the weight of documentation. The SEC filed federal charges, securities fraud, wire fraud, money laundering. Potential sentence, 20 years. The divorce court froze all of Derek's accounts, including the hidden ones, ordered full asset disclosure, appointed a forensic accountant to trace every dollar. And Claire received a call from Detective Moss. Mrs. Brennan, the DA is dropping all charges against you. The evidence of the spoofed text messages is conclusive. Derek Brennan will be charged with filing a false police report and obstruction of justice. I'm sorry you went through this. Claire hung up and cried. Not from happiness. Exactly. From exhaustion. From relief. From the overwhelming weight of surviving. That night, her water broke. Reed drove her to the hospital at 3 a.m., running red lights and swearing at other drivers. Jules met them in the ER, still in pajamas, having been on standby for weeks. You've got this, Jules said, gripping Claire's hand as another contraction hit. Labor was long and brutal, 18 hours of pain that made everything else seem insignificant. The betrayal, the court battles, the fear, all of it faded to background noise against the primal reality of bringing life into the world. At 9:43 p.m., Claire's son was born. 7 pounds, 4 ounces. Perfect. The nurse placed him in her arms, and Claire looked into her baby's face for the first time. He had her nose, her chin, Derek's eyes, unfortunately, but she'd learned to love them anyway. Hey, Jackson, she whispered, the name she'd chosen alone, without Derek's input. I'm your mom. We're going to be okay. Reed stood in the corner, crying unashamedly. Jules took photos on her phone, documenting this moment of triumph and beginning. 2 rooms down the hall, Vanessa Hartley was also in labor. Her daughter was born 3 hours later. Claire heard about it from a nurse, felt a strange pang of connection. 2 women, both bringing Derek's children into the world on the same night, both doing it alone. Derek, arrested 2 days prior, sat in a federal detention center awaiting trial. He'd been denied bail, deemed a flight risk given the evidence of planned escape. He'd sent no message, made no call, shown no interest in either birth. His children would grow up without him, and maybe that was for the best. Claire stayed in the hospital for 2 days, learning to nurse, to change diapers, to function on no sleep. Reed brought her clothes and snacks. Jules handled paperwork and fielded calls from the media. Derek's arrest had made news, the hedge fund scandal growing larger by the day. On the 3rd day, a woman appeared at Claire's door. Paige Hartley, Vanessa's mother, elegant, composed, and carrying a gift bag. Mrs. Brennan, may I come in? Claire, wary but curious, nodded. Paige entered, looking at Jackson sleeping in the bassinet. He's beautiful. Congratulations. Thank you. Paige set the gift bag on the table. Baby supplies and something else. She pulled out an envelope. Derek stole from me too, nearly $200,000, invested in a scheme that was supposed to triple my retirement fund. I didn't know Vanessa was involved with him until the hearing. I'm sorry, but don't be. My daughter made her choices, as did your husband. Paige handed Claire the envelope. That's a check, $100,000, not charity, an investment. Claire opened it, stunned. The check was real. Why don't? Because you're starting over. You'll need capital for that. And because Derek should never have taken what you built together and destroyed it. Consider this partial restitution. Paige moved toward the door. My daughter and I are leaving Boston. Too many bad memories. But I wanted to help you before we go. Wait, Claire stood carefully, still sore from delivery. Tell Vanessa. Tell her I hope she finds what she's looking for. Her and her daughter. Paige nodded. I will. After she left, Claire looked at the check, then at Jackson. $100,000. Not the life she'd planned, but a foundation to build on. Jules came by that evening with champagne sparkling cider for Claire and updates. Derek's lawyer is trying to negotiate a plea. The SEC has enough to put him away for 15 years minimum. He's screwed. Jules raised her glass. To justice, and to you, for surviving. They clinked glasses. Claire looked at Jackson, feeling the weight of responsibility and possibility. What happens now, she asked. Now you file for divorce, get asset division settled, build your new life. Jules smiled. And you raise that beautiful boy into someone better than his father. Claire thought about the woman she'd been 6 months ago. Trusting, naive, building a life on false foundations. That woman was gone. In her place was someone harder, scarred, but stronger. Someone who'd fought her way through betrayal and almost losing everything. Someone who'd learned that survival wasn't pretty or easy, but it was possible. We're going to be okay, she told Jules, and for the first time, she believed it. 1 year later, Claire stood in her new apartment in Cambridge, smaller than the brownstone, but hers alone, bought with the settlement money from the divorce. Jackson, 13 months old, toddled around the living room, babbling and clutching a toy truck Reed had given him. The divorce had been finalized 3 months ago. Derek, from federal prison where he was serving 12 years, had signed everything. He'd lost the legal battle on all fronts: the marriage, the money, the fraud charges. Everything. Claire got the house, which she'd sold, got full custody, which Derek didn't contest, got half the legitimate assets and restitution for the hidden money. Not everything she'd lost, but enough to start over. Derek had supervised visitation rights once released from prison. He'd never exercised them, hadn't even sent a birthday card when Jackson turned 1. His son would grow up without a father. It was tragic and liberating in equal measure. Claire returned to work part-time, doing freelance marketing consultation. She'd rebuilt her professional network, taking on clients who appreciated her experience. The money was good, the hours flexible around Jackson's schedule. Jules remained her best friend, stopping by most Sundays for brunch and updates on the legal world's latest gossip. Reed lived 3 blocks away, visited twice a week, spoiled Jackson shamelessly. On a sunny October afternoon, Claire sat in a coffee shop working on a client proposal while Jackson played with the blocks at her feet. A young woman at the next table was crying quietly on her phone. I can't do this anymore, Banya, the woman said. He says he loves me, but I found texts. I don't know what to do. I'm pregnant and alone, and I don't know. Claire hesitated, then approached the woman after she hung up. I'm sorry, I couldn't help overhearing. Are you okay? The woman looked up, mascara streaked. Not really. Claire handed her a business card, Jules's contact information. Call this lawyer. She helped me when I thought I'd lost everything. She's good at what she does, and she'll believe you. The woman took the card, studying it. What happened to you? My ex-husband tried to destroy me, frame me for crimes I didn't commit, take my son, bankrupt me. Claire smiled slightly. He failed, and if you need help getting through something similar, you don't have to do it alone. The woman's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. After returning to her table, Claire looked at Jackson, who'd abandoned blocks in favor of trying to eat a napkin. She pulled it away, kissed his head, inhaled his baby smell. They'd survived. More than survived. They'd rebuilt. Was it the life she'd imagined? No. She'd lost the husband, the big house, the fairy tale future. She had stretch marks and trauma and therapy appointments. Had trust issues and financial stress and the constant low-grade anxiety of single motherhood. But she also had freedom, self-respect, the knowledge that she'd fought for her son and won. That night, after Jackson fell asleep, Claire stood at her apartment window looking out at Cambridge's lights. Somewhere in this city, Derek sat in a cell paying for his crimes. Vanessa was in California, raising her daughter. The brownstone had new owners, a young family who'd painted over all the memories. And Claire was here, scarred, surviving, stronger than she'd ever imagined she could be. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jules. Coffee tomorrow. Have news about a new client similar situation to yours. Thought you might want to help. Claire smiled and typed back, I'm in, because that's what survivors did. They didn't just rebuild their own lives. They helped others escape the wreckage. She looked at Jackson's baby monitor, watching his chest rise and fall in peaceful sleep. This boy would grow up knowing his mother was a fighter, that she'd faced impossible odds and refused to break. He'd learn that betrayal could shatter you, but the breaking didn't have to be the end of the story. Sometimes it was the beginning. Claire picked up a pen and her journal, something her therapist had suggested. She wrote, Today I helped a stranger, told her my story in 30 seconds, and handed her hope in the form of a business card. A year ago, I couldn't have done that. A year ago, I could barely breathe through the pain. Now I can breathe, can work, can raise my son alone and know we'll be okay. Derek took a year of my life, took my savings, my home, my naive belief in happy endings. But he didn't take my future, didn't take my strength, didn't take my capacity to rebuild something better from the ashes. They say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I don't know if that's true, but I know what nearly destroyed me taught me something valuable. I'm harder to break than anyone thought, including myself. And that knowledge, that's worth more than any marriage, any brownstone, any false promise of forever. Jackson and I are going to be just fine. She closed the journal, turned off the light, and went to bed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new struggles, new moments of doubt. But tonight, in this moment, Claire Brennan was at peace. She'd survived the perfect betrayal and emerged imperfect but whole. And that was enough. Claire's journey reminds us that betrayal doesn't define who we become our response to. It does. If this story moved you, give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who needs to hear that survival is possible. What would you have done in Claire's situation? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of resilience, justice, and the strength we discover when life pushes us to the edge. Thanks for listening. See you in the next story.